What's up, everyone, and welcome into episode number 531, where it is my honor and privilege to introduce a special guest during this episode, and that is EMU football player Owen Edlen. How are you doing, Owen?
I'm doing really well, Zach. Thank you so much for having me on. I'm excited to hop into this and see how this goes.
Yeah, no, I'm excited to have you on. I'm really looking forward to it. I think it's going to be a really fun discussion. It's going to be obviously a unique one because you didn't obviously end up at EMU originally. We'll kind of get into that a little bit. But how excited are you to be going to Eastern Michigan in a couple of weeks at this point?
Yeah, we're under the 2 week mark now. It's about 11 days from the time of this recording. So I'm excited. I'm really excited. I've obviously left for college before when I went to Air Force, but it feels a little different leaving to go to Eastern Michigan as opposed to going out to Colorado Springs at the Air Force Academy. So heck yeah, I'm excited.
I was just going to say maybe a little less stressful if I'm going to be completely honest, or if you're going to be completely honest with yourself.
Yeah, definitely less stressful. Just because, uh, you know a little bit more of what to expect in terms of going to Eastern. Just because going to an academy is very there's going to be a culture shock. That being said, you don't know all what that culture shock entails. So, oh yeah.
Exactly. And also you've gotten to deal with a little bit of the football part of it as well, which obviously with it being a different team, it's going to be a kind of like a different atmosphere, different environment, different way of doing it, but you still have a little bit of kind of that football, college football background to kind of understand what you're going to probably go through, at least see at least a little bit. Offensively, it will be probably quite a bit different from your side of the ball going against the offense, but
Absolutely.
it's college football anyways, so it
Absolutely.
can't. How much different can it be by say that, and then next thing you know, you do completely opposite of what you do defensively at the defensive end position than you did at Air Force.
Absolutely. I know we're going to get into it a little more here in a sec, but when I get to Eastern, it's really going to be my first time fully diving into college football just because I know we're going to talk about my injury coming up here in a little bit, but, having 5 non-contact practices at Air Force, and then besides that, just watching the rest of practices, uh, obviously it's going to feel a little different than being full on go at EMU. So, oh yeah, but you are right, having a little bit of background already with playing for a different team, playing at the collegiate level. So,
Yeah, absolutely. And let's get into a little bit of kind of your background, a little bit about how you end up at Air Force, because I know you come from a small town. I know that I believe in like an interview that you were asked like, "Hey, like would you ever like consider going to like a bigger school for a real opportunity for maybe like getting D1 offers?" But I know that at your small school, you did get D1 offers, obviously Air Force, Army, Western Michigan. I know there's other couple schools that were interested in
hmm
you as well, especially Eastern Michigan didn't necessarily offer you, but they showed interest in you. Can you just talk about like that journey and just how it led you to committing to Air Force?
yeah, absolutely. So, man, the I guess I could go as far back as possible. Just because since I was 5, I've always wanted to. Since I was 5, my goal's always been to go to the NFL, play at the Division 1 level, and that's a goal that I've never let go of. That's a goal that I will never let go of. It's funny because when you're 5, when you're 5 years old, 7 years old, playing in Pop Warner, everyone's goal is to go to the NFL. Like all your friends' goals, their goals always to go to the NFL. But then as time goes on, you see your friends slowly drop off, or like, yeah, I'd love to go, but it's probably not going to happen. And then for me,
Exactly.
I just never let that go, and I never will. So I'm still chasing my dreams since I was 5 years old, which is really exciting. No, but in terms of coming from a small town and a small school, like you said, yeah, there were some people who asked me if maybe I would want to go to a bigger high school, just because Chesterton High School, it's doesn't have the didn't have the best history of getting people to the Division 1 level.
Yeah.
So there were some people who asked me like, "Hey, would you maybe want to look into going to this school, or would you want to, you know what I mean? Just asking me different high schools I'd be interested in going, and I basically shut them off right away because I'm a very loyal person.
Exactly.
So, people ask me, you might want to think about going to a bigger school. I'm like, no, I'm staying at Chesterton. I know the history in terms of Division One athletes that they've produced isn't as flashy as some of the other schools in the conference. But I'm someone who's always not really cared about what the statistics or the odds say. And I'm sure that's a common thing that you'll hear other athletes say. But in terms of choosing to stay at my high school, I was like, I didn't really care that the history of Division One athletes produced wasn't flashy, because I knew that I could do it. I knew that I could do it from Chesterton, and the support system that I had, in terms of the community, in terms of my parents, obviously my teammates, it was really good. So, for me, it was like, sure, they historically haven't produced Division One talent as much as other schools in the conference, but for me that didn't matter because I knew that as long as I kept the faith and worked hard, that I would get it done.
Yeah, it's kind of like that self-belief. It's also wanting to achieve the goal that you wanted to achieve since 5 years old, is you wanted to play in the NFL, which doesn't necessarily mean you have to go D1, because there's been D2, D3 guys that have made the NFL,
Very
right?
true.
But like D1 for a lot of people is kind of like the main goal. Like there's some people that might specifically say like throughout their career it's like D1 or bust. Like it's like either
Hmm.
I'm going to play D1 athletics or I'm not going to play at all. I don't necessarily think that's the right mindset, because I love talking to D2. I love talking to D3. Don't get me wrong, love talking to D1 athletes. I think D1
Of course.
athletes are great, but I think there's also athletes at the D2, D3 level that are great elite athletes as well, that maybe not had gotten the opportunity, or maybe just kind of that's how it ended up. But it's about going and kind of wanting to achieve the dream that you want to have, which I know that you're still obviously working towards. But like for you, what was kind of like the biggest turning point in your career so far? Like one kind of moment where you kind of knew like, hey, this isn't necessarily just a dream. This is going to be an opportunity for me to go somewhere in football.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great question. So, um, in terms of my recruiting process, I was, if you compare me to other athletes, we'll say, like, if you compare me to other people who are getting Division One offers, I was actually late in my recruiting process, in terms of when I started, picking up traction from other schools and stuff like that. So there was people in my grade who were like committed. So there was a guy in my grade. He didn't go to the same school as me, but he was at Crom Point, which is a school in our conference, and he was committed to go play at Miami, Ohio, before I
Okay.
even had like any offers or anything like that. And then of course there's other people within the conference who are getting looks. Um, so I was actually late in terms of when I started picking up traction. But I always like I'm a big man of faith, so I it really didn't discourage me. My parents got a little worried at times, but I was very like, it's gonna come. Like the time is gonna come. In the spring of my junior year of high school, um, I got. I'm reaching out to all these schools. I'm, sending emails. I'm sending messages over Twitter, all that stuff, and like none of these schools are responding to me. You know what I mean? Like I'm sending. It's got to be hundreds of messages, and none of the schools are responding. Um, and then randomly, I get a message from a school that I didn't message, and that was Air Force recruiting, and they were like, "Hey, Owen, we saw your film. They're like, could you fill out our recruiting form so we could get to know more about you?" And I was like, "Sweet." So I fill that out, and like a week later, I get a text from the coach, and he's like, "Hey, Owen, this is Coach Knorr, the defensive coordinator at Air Force. I would love to come see you." I'm like, "Oh, sweet." And he's like, "I'm gonna fly out this day to come see you." And I'm like, "Wow, okay." So he flies out and he meets me early in the morning before school, and my mom's there, and he just talks to my mom and I, tells us about Air Force, and then so the NCAA has weird rules. Um, And he was like, I would offer you right now. He's like, but I for some reason can't offer you in person,
Yeah.
just because the NCAA's weird rules. He's like, so when I leave here, call me and then we'll offer you. I'm like, okay. So he left, and I called him later that day, and then I received my first offer from Air Force. So that was a really cool moment. And I don't want to say that's when I, knew that it wasn't fake, because I knew that it was going to come at some point. It obviously came later than I thought, but receiving my first offer from Air Force, that was just obviously a big kind of celebration, big step in the right direction. But it's not something that I was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe it actually happened, because I knew that it was going to happen at some point. And then to talk about turning point, there is a moment in my recruiting process that really did feel like the turning point of my career per se. This is a couple months after I got offered by Air Force, and it's summer, it's summer vacation now, and I'm going to all these football camps, going to like all these scheduled football camps, and I go to Notre Dame's football recruiting camp, and I'm someone, my dream school was always Notre Dame since I was like 5. My goal, like I was always like, I'm gonna play for Notre Dame. That was what I said since I was 5, and I go to Notre Dame's recruiting camp, and Western Michigan is there. Notre Dame is obviously there, and I had the camp of my life. Like it was the best recruiting camp that I ever had. And Western Michigan talks to me about, like, within the first fourth of the camp, like a little less than halfway through the camp, Western Michigan comes up to me and they're like, hey, we're loving what we see out there. They're like, we're going to keep watching you, and hopefully we can get you a shot. So I'm like, great. Like, heck yeah. Cause at this point I only have the academies. So I had Air Force and I had Army, and it's a blessing to have, but obviously, like, as a kid who doesn't know as much about the academies, it's like, oh, strict military stuff. So, I was looking to get some like more regular college type offers. So Western Michigan is like, hopefully we can give you a shot. And I was like, awesome. So I keep camping. I have the best camp of my life. And at the end of the camp, someone from Notre Dame's staff comes up to me and he's like, hey, after the camp, find me and I'm going to walk you to our manager. And I'm
Okay.
like, shoot.
Yeah.
So the camp ends. I find the guy from Notre Dame. He walks me to the manager. And the manager is like, hey, you look pretty good out there. I'm like, thank you, And he's like, I'm not sure if you'd be interested in this. And I kind of cut him off and I go, interested in what? Playing here? He's like, yeah, well, I know you have Air Force and Army. And I just was like, this is my dream school, And he's like, well, sweet. He's like, well, he goes, you look good out there. He's like, we want to offer you a preferred walk-on. And that was the moment where, just because Notre Dame was my dream school since I was 5, when I heard them offer, yes, it was a preferred walk-on, but in my, like, that's still an opportunity, that's still a guaranteed roster spot. You know what I mean? That's still a spot on the team. So that, like, for me, that was a moment where I was like, oh my gosh, like, this happened. You know what I mean? I was like, this is remarkable. Like, I had probably one of the biggest smiles that I've ever had on my face. So that moment was incredible. And then, like, literally 5-10 minutes after I got the preferred walk-on from Notre Dame, Western Michigan coaches walked back up to me and they're like, hey, like, we want to give you a full ride. Like, we want you here, So
Exactly.
in terms of turning point, that camp really, that camp at Notre Dame, I would say, was the turning point where I was like, okay, it's not just the academies. Like, these other schools are also interested. Obviously a really good MAC school is interested in Western Michigan, and then my dream school, sees potential in me. You know what I mean? So that if I had to choose like a turning point, I would say that camp at Notre Dame was probably the turning point.
Was there any part of you that wanted to accept that preferred walk on the spot and just say, okay, I'm committed, I'm done with this because this is where I've always wanted to go?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah. If that hadn't been a preferred walk on, if that was like a full offer, I probably would have committed on the spot. Thing is, I don't have $70,000 in my pocket, so
Yeah, yeah, that
um,
plays a little bit into it.
yeah. So my parents and we enjoyed the moment, and I know you said, was there a part of me that wanted to commit? I was going to commit. I talked to my parents, obviously, so we celebrated the moment just because it was a huge moment, and I talked to my parents, the night of, or like the day after the camp. And I'm like, Mom and Dad, I'm like, if you are willing to help me out for 1 year, like, I'm like, if you are willing to help me out for the first year, I was like, I promise you, I will earn the scholarship at Notre Dame. I'm like, please, if you are willing to help me out for the first year, I promise you, I'll earn the scholarship. And they, my dad was a little hesitant, um, just because
It's a
that's
big commitment, obviously.
that's a big financial risk. But I was very confident, and ultimately, they were going to help me out. Um, so I actually, after I got the okay that they would help me out for the first year, I was like, that's it, I'm committing to Notre Dame. So about maybe a week later, maybe less than a week later, I called Notre Dame, letting them know that I wanted to commit, and they were like, hey, they're like, since you're a preferred walk on, they were like, we want to get you out to a game day visit, but before the visit, we want you to talk with our admissions. They're like, we want you here. They're like, but admissions needs to kind of get a character check on you, and then like look at your transcript and stuff before we can actually have you commit. And I'm like, okay, cool. So this was like a month before their first game. So then their first game rolls around, and I call, just to kind of get an update. Still in my mind, thinking I'm gonna commit there. And I was like, hey, I was like, hey, like, I know you're gonna get me on the visit or whatever. Obviously, you guys are still my dream school. I want to commit there. Um, and they were really cool about it. They were like, oh, and they're like, we don't know if you heard. They're like, there's some stuff going on in the NCAA right now, where they're talking about shortening the roster sizes. And if they do that, we won't be able to take preferred walk-ons. And they were like, we still want you here as a preferred walk-on. We're not saying like it's over. Um, they're like, we just need to see how this pans out. They were like, so we're going to hold on the visit right now. They're like, because we don't want to get your hopes up and then obviously have the rule go through, and, then like it not be a thing. And I was like, okay, cool. So this was kind of risky on my part. But realistically, if I had to do it all over again, I would do it all over again. I held out because I obviously wanted to commit to Notre Dame, but it was like I was on hold, basically. I was on standby because of this rule. Um, and I held off, and I basically waited for like a couple months to see if this rule was going to go through. I basically waited for the whole process to see if the rule was going to go through. But in doing that, I had to decline some other schools. Take Western Michigan, for example. Like I didn't commit to them because I was waiting to commit to Notre Dame. Um, so I stay in contact with Notre Dame for, the next couple months. I end up getting to go on a game day visit, talk to the D-line coach, the assistant GM, and stuff like that. But ultimately, at the end of my football season, like right after my high school season ended, I hopped on a call with Notre Dame, and they were like, dude, they're like, we're sorry. Like, we wanted you here as a preferred walk-on, but that 105 rule, it's going to go through, and like, we won't be able to take any more preferred walk-ons. So obviously, like, it was a little disappointing, but I I really, like, I kept my head up high. You know what I mean? Like, you would think I would have been
Exactly.
devastated, but I kept my head up high, and like I really, like, I know I mentioned I'm a man of faith. I really, like, I had faith. Like, I trusted. Like, I knew it was going to be all good. Like, sure, like I didn't get to go to Notre Dame, um, but I knew it was going to be all good, and clearly it worked out with EMU. Um,
Exactly.
so at the time, like, so Notre Dame obviously says no because the rule went through. And then at that point, I didn't have an offer from Western anymore, just because, like, I was holding out, and they filled up the roster in that time. Um, and my options were limited, but I still had the academies. I still had Air Force and Army. Um, I had a preferred walk on to IU, but my communication with them wasn't like it was a little shaky. They weren't communicating with me as well as say some of the other schools were. And then I could have gone to I could have gone on the FCS level. Um, but I had my limited options. I was really grateful because like I wait all that time. The school says no, but then I still have a couple good options, and like that's
Exactly.
just a blessing in and of itself. Um, and ultimately I ended up committing to Air Force at the end of my first recruiting process, I guess we'll call it.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Just talk a little bit about like committing to Air Force and just how impactful not only that official visit was, but I also know you had conversations at the time with a couple current players. One of the current players that I actually had on that is at Paris now is Jackson Altwies. I know that you guys had quite a few, or at least a little bit of conversations about like going to Air Force.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Jackson's a great guy. So
Oh yeah, he's awesome. I love Jackson. He's a
yeah,
good guy.
he's cool. So after after Notre Dame called and said no, um and I looked at my options and I'm like, okay, I have Air Force, I have Army, I have a preferred walk on to IU, but I'm kind of unsure about the way they're communicating with me. That's when I really started to weigh out kind of like my three options left. And I kind of threw Army out of the picture. I'm like, you know what? Like I haven't really talked to them as much as I've talked to Air Force. I like the way Air Force is recruiting me better than the way Army's recruiting me. So it was really between a preferred walk on to IU and going to Air Force. Um, and just in my head trying to like weigh them out, I'm like, okay, I'm clearly more wanted at Air Force, and I really love the coaches here at Air Force from just talking to them and stuff. But at the same time, I'm like, do I really want to go to Air Force? You know what I mean? Just because it's such like I mean, you could most recruits who are at Air Force, you can ask them. It's a leap of faith when you initially are looking at actually committing there. Like it's for some of them, it's a no brainer, and then for a large handful of the recruits, it's like, okay, am I really good on this? Just because of how unique and different and big of a commitment it is.
Oh yeah.
So I have a buddy who played at a high school close by me, about 20 minutes away. So my friend and I, our high schools played every year, and he had
Okay.
committed the year prior to go be a long snapper at Air Force. So he was kind of texting me all throughout my recruiting process. My friend from I don't know if you've heard of Hobart High School. It's like 20 minutes away from Chesterton, and so my friend from Hobart High School, he's texting me all throughout my recruiting process, like the move, man, like come to Air
Yeah.
Force, stuff like that. Um, so after after Notre Dame called and said they couldn't take me, and I was like seriously considering Air Force at this point, I called my friend from Hobart and I was like, all right, dude, like you're there right now. Tell me about it. Like I want to know what's good. I want to know what's bad. Like,
Yeah,
is it
like tell me
something?
everything about it.
Exactly. I'm like, tell me everything about it. So we were on the phone for like, 45 minutes to an hour, and he's telling me all about it. And then like a day or two later, he texted me and he's like, hey, he's like, this is my friend. He's a defensive end like you. He's like, I gave him your number. His name's Jackson Altweiss.
All twice, yeah, always. So,
Yeah.
sorry for pronouncing your name
Oh
incorrectly.
yeah. No, but yeah. So my friend, he's like, I gave my friend your number. His name's Jackson Altweiss. He's gonna call you here within the next couple days. Um, so like a day or two later, Jackson calls me, and again, him and I are on the phone for like 45 minutes to an hour, and he's telling me all about it. Like he's telling me all about what he likes, what he doesn't like. And Jackson was pretty real. Jackson was pretty real when talking about it because he told me the good stuff, but he was also like, "Look, dude, there are parts of this that suck. Like, you know what I
Oh
mean?
yeah.
There's no way around it. There's parts of it that suck." He's like, "But I really think this would be your best decision to make." He's like, "I think this is the way to go." So I get off the call with Jackson, and then I obviously talk to my friend. from Hobart a couple days earlier. And at this point, I'm like, okay, like I've talked to two people who are already there, and they seem to like it. Like it's tough, but they seem to like it. So that made me feel a bit better. Because I was like, I'm like, it's of course it's going to be hard. I was like, but it sounds like overall, like this is a good thing, you know. Um,
Exactly.
yeah. So I was pretty excited. I was pretty excited about that. And then, fast forward a couple weeks and I'm texting the coaches at Air Force and stuff. Actually, the defensive coordinator from Air Force, he was like, "Hey, I want to come visit you again." I'm like, "Cool." So he comes over, to my house to have like lunch with my family and I. And again, I'm asking the defensive coordinator, who's been recruiting me. He's at my house, and I'm asking him questions and stuff, getting to talk to him. Told him some of my concerns. And that was a good conversation. And at the end of that house visit that we had with him, he's like, "Well, look," he's like, "We want to get you on an official visit. We have like," he's like, "I think we have 3 weekends available for an official visit." He's like, "We have all starting in January." And I was like, "Great." So I talked to my family. He obviously leaves and stuff like that. And I get scheduled to go to an official visit in mid-January of I guess it would be this year. I know it's almost the new year, so I went on the official visit in mid-January, and it was an amazing visit. It really was. It was, Colorado Springs itself is obviously beautiful, but
Oh yeah.
I really do. I really do love Air Force football, and being on the official visit, getting to see what Air Force football was all about. I was like I love this. You know what I mean? Um,
Exactly.
in terms of the academy itself, like not Air Force football, that was the part where I was like, that was the part of the visit where I was still a little unsure, like, okay, do I really want the academy itself?
Yeah.
But in terms of like the official visit was for football, it wasn't for the academy per se. So I'm at the official visit, and everything I saw Air Force football wise, I loved.
Exactly.
And then in terms of what I saw academy wise, I was a little unsure about, not because it was bad, just because I was like, I don't know if this is what I want in terms of the academic side of things. You know what I mean? But overall, I ended up praying about it, um, which I'd been doing from the start of my recruiting process, like literally from the start of since before the start of my recruiting process all the way through. Like I literally just was praying all the time, like, please, lead me where you want me. Even if it's not exactly, even if it's a surprise, lead me where you want me to go. So I'm praying on this official visit to Air Force, and at the end of the official visit, I ended up committing to Air Force. So.
And then you end up, obviously, like you said, committing, and then you end up actually going to the school for a little bit. And
Hmm.
obviously, you enjoy the football part of it, but you don't necessarily know, like you specifically said, you don't necessarily know like exactly 100% of what you expected. And really, the first time you probably got a little bit of a wake up call is that when you finally stepped on campus at the Air Force prep for the first time. What was that first day like for you?
Yeah, of course. That's a good question. So, um, for I guess so for those listening, like the way Air Force kind of red shirts people per se is by sending them to the Air Force prep school. And it's not necessarily about like athletic ability. Going to the prep school is more like, hey, the main academy, it's very rigorous academically. So we send you to the prep school basically to help prepare you for the rigorous academic/military life of the main academy. So yeah, I knew going into it that it was going to be hard. Like I knew basic training was going to be hard, and stuff like that. Like obviously it was still a culture shock, but I went into it knowing that it was gonna be tough. So you ask about my first day though. The first day was interesting. I got dropped off at about like 9, 10 in the morning, something like that. And it's not like typical college, where it's move-in day, your parents help you unpack your bags and help you set up your room, stay for a little while and chit chat, and then are on their way. It's go 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 right away. So all of my college was packed in a bag. Like I showed up to Air Force literally with one bag with everything in it. Uh, it was kind of funny. Like when we're packing, like we finished packing, and I look at the backpack. I'm like, all right, college in a bag. Like let's go. So I get dropped off in the morning with my one bag. Um, I hug my parents and stuff, but it's literally like you get dropped off there and it's like you have to give your parents a quick hug before they're like, all right, come on, let's keep it moving. We got to get more people here. So
Exactly.
I say bye to my parents for like 30, 45 seconds before, they have to drive off. Um, and then the first day is in processing. So the first day, it's like the first half of the first day is kind of boring because like you get there and they're basically just asking for papers. It's like you're walking through. Everyone's being really nice to you, actually. They're like, hey, welcome to the Air Force Academy prep school. They're like, you're going to get through this. It's going to be all good. And you're going through this in processing and all that stuff. And I see a few of the football players who are also gone there, and we're talking and stuff, just kind of waiting around, going through this long, like 3 hour, this long 3 hour in processing, and we're like, dang, this is kind of boring so far. Um, but then in processing is over, and they bring us into this room, and they're like, cool, you're gonna take an oath, and we're like, all right. So we have to
Like this is a part of the process.
yeah, exactly. So, we all throw our hands up, take this oath, and then they're like, all right, now that you guys have taken the oath, you're going to line up. And they adjusted us a certain way. They had us line up and they had us all line up a certain way. And they're like, all right, walk to that door. They open the door and they're like, all right, start walking forward. So we step out the building, we start walking forward, and then that's when the hammer comes down, and they start screaming at you and all that stuff, telling you just to, you're speed walking, and they're telling you to walk faster and all that stuff, and then some people start to jog, and they're like, stop jogging, you have to speed walk, all that stuff. So the first half of the first day was really boring, and then the second half, that's when like the excitement starts per se. So it's like I get to my like we're out and about all day, like they're screaming at us and all this stuff. They stop us at like one of the dorm buildings. So they stop us at our dorm building. And they're like screaming at us. They're like, you're gonna go in there, they're gonna tell your room, you're gonna go like put your bag down. So I go and like they tell me my room number. And like I start seeing people like run upstairs and stuff like that because most of the rooms are upstairs, but mine was actually on the main level. So I just kind of followed along with people, and then I looked and I'm like, shoot, my room is not upstairs, and so I got screamed at for that. I go back downstairs, I find my room. And I literally just walk in my room, and it's not like you get to walk in and be like, all right, cool, this is my room. It's like I walk in my room, I throw my bag down, and then I'm like right back out doing more whatever the heck they're telling me to do. So, definitely definitely a mixed bag on the first day. I will say this though, after the first day, after the first day where the first half was boring, like as soon as the more military aspect started, it didn't end for 3 weeks. So, yeah, but definitely an interesting first day of college as compared to most
Yeah, I was
experiences.
just gonna say not your typical first day, but then after that, truly basic training starts, and that's when you truly kind of start to a little bit make that transition from being like a high school to now obviously working
Being
your
in the
way
military,
into
yeah.
being in the military, being at the Air Force Academy. Talk a
hmm
little bit about what basic training was like and just how it kind of prepared you to be a preppy.
Yeah, of course. The simple answer is like it sucked. It wasn't fun. I knew it was going to be hard. Basically, everyone there knew basic training was going to be hard. So it's not like oh, basic training was hard. I didn't expect that. Like everyone knew it was going to be hard. But it was harder in ways that I didn't expect. Like basic training to me, it was more mentally challenging than it was physically challenging. Like we did our military workouts, we did all that stuff. That wasn't I didn't struggle with that. Like that was fine for me. For me, it was the mental part of like from 5:30 in the morning to 9 o'clock at night. You are like every move, like you are being told what your every move will be. You know what I mean? Like it's not like, oh, we're gonna do this at this time, and you know, like there's some free time in between. It's like literally from 5:30 and like right from when you wake up all the way until you go to bed, they are telling you your every move. Um, and it was like it was mentally tough because obviously you're away from your family and loved ones and you have no communication with them at all.
Exactly.
And then you're getting screamed at for most of the day, being told what to do all day. And like when you go in to eat, it's like you have 10 minutes to eat, but you have to sit with perfect posture. And like you, you have to sit with perfect posture. You can't like lean over to eat. Like you have to bring it to your mouth, stuff like that. Um, you know, so it was definitely more mentally challenging, than it was physically challenging. Um, but looking back on it, like I'm glad I went through that. And then also looking back on it, like there was some funny moments too, you know, just in terms of how ridiculous it all was,
Yeah.
about like the way they treat us and stuff like that.
I,
So
I was just going to say, I've heard people say like it's the most fun you'll ever have that you never want to have again.
yeah, oh, that's true. That's true. And it's not even necessary. It's more fun when you look back on it.
Yeah.
When you're going through it, you're like, oh my gosh, this just be done. Like these people, like they're complaining about the most petty stuff. You know what I mean? Like you're there, and even if you do everything right, you're doing everything wrong. And that's, you know, it's a game. Like the instructors, they're not actually, you know, mad at you while you're going through basic. It's all an act. Like it's just how they're supposed to be. And even when you know it's an act, like even when you know you're getting screamed at, but it's just like literally for nothing, you know it's for nothing. The person who's screaming it, you knows it's for nothing. You know, I guess it makes it a little easier, but then at the same time, it also makes it more annoying because you're like, okay, just stop. Like I know you're not actually mad at me. I'm fine. Nothing's really wrong here, you know? So, oh
Yeah,
yeah.
but at the same time, like they still need to obviously get you prepared to be like a preppy, still get you prepared to be kind of that military type lifestyle that you obviously kind of lived out once you got past basic training. But before we get into kind of preppy, like what the physically, mentally, like demanding
Hmm.
part of it, um, like do you have any like like stories that you can tell, or like a story or two that you can tell from
Yeah.
basic training? I know that obviously there's probably some things that like you can't specifically probably say or stuff like that, but I'm sure probably a lot of that time was getting smoked, doing push-ups,
Yeah.
sit-ups, doing all
Yeah.
that kind of stuff.
I have some funny stories to tell. And I guess to kind of answer your question from earlier, sorry, I guess I kind of like lost track of the question. In terms of how basic prepared me to be a preppy, I guess the simple way to put it is basic really instilled in me and all the other people there, that we are no longer our own. We are now the property of the government. And that's kind of what that's kind of the biggest thing that basic instills in you. It's like, by the way, you're not your own, like you are your own person, but like you're now the property of the government. And that's basically what basic training, that was like the
Which
biggest
is a
thing that
different
basic.
lifestyle, right? Different
Yeah,
like
exactly.
approach,
Completely different
different feeling.
lifestyle. So basic training really just helped you. Basic training was like the ultimate extreme of what life of a preppy is going to be like. Like, you know what I mean? Like it was just all the hardest and worst stuff they throw at you and that in those 3 weeks, just to like let you know that it can get tough, but you know, it gets better after basic training. It's not as hard as life as a preppy isn't strictly basic training. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Um,
it's a little bit easier, but still not easy. So
Yeah, exactly. That's a good way to put it. No, but in terms of some funny stories, man, I I could share a few, but the first one that comes to my mind. So me and my roommate. So one of the things about basic is like you're always standing. Like even when you're not doing anything, you're standing. If you go to clean, so like there, if you go to clean your room and stuff like that, and say you have your room neat and in order, and you're waiting for everyone else to finish theirs, you aren't allowed to sit. Like each of our rooms have a like we each had a desk in our room which had a chair. So like we finished cleaning our room and I sit down in my chair and like an instructor walks by and he's like, "Why are you sitting?" I'm like, "Well, sir, like, we're done cleaning our room. And he's like, you haven't earned that privilege yet. And so, we're standing the whole time. And that just, yeah, that was another thing about basic, is just that you were always standing. But a funny story that comes to mind for me is during basic training, everyone wore a camelback. Like, you know what that is? Like the backpack that has water in it with the straw and stuff like that.
Yeah.
That was your way of staying hydrated for 3 weeks. And my roommate and I were in the building, and we were like, hey, let's refill our backpacks. Keep in mind, during basic, you aren't allowed to talk. You have to keep a straight look on your face. Most of the time, you have to be standing like at attention, like all stiff and everything. So my roommate and I are like, all right, let's go fill up our backpacks. So we march, we march at attention to like the water fill up thing. My roommate is filling up his water backpack, and it's taking a long time. Like, it's just filling up slowly, you know.
Yeah.
So he just kind of looks at me. He just kind of like smirks, like, like it's taking a while, and I just kind of do it back. And then one of the instructors goes, "Why are you guys laughing?" And we both snap to attention. We turn, and I'm like, "Ma'am, we were not." I'm like, "Ma'am, we were not laughing." And she goes, "Oh, so you're calling me a liar?" I'm like, "No, ma'am, I am not calling you a liar." I was like, "We were not laughing." She's like, "Then what did I just see?" I was like, and I'm like, "Ma'am," I was like, I smirked at my roommate as he was filling up his water, but we were not laughing. And then I was like, "Still unacceptable, ma'am." And she's like, "I'm tired of this." She's like, "No, you guys walk away." Oh, like we march away, and then we hear her again, and she's like, "You know what? No, I'm done with this." She goes over the intercom, calls our entire, it's called a squadron, but it's our dorm building, and there's like 77 people in it. And she's like, "Attention in the squadron, everyone fall out on the drill pad right now." So we all fall out on the drill pad, and they're like, "You guys got to lock it in. We got Edlen." And like they said my roommate's name, they're like, "You got Edlen and his roommates smiling at each other in the hallway." They're like, "We're all gonna do," they called it tools, but it's basically we're gonna do push-ups and all that stuff. So they're like, "We're gonna do all of that right now." So we start doing push-ups, sit-ups, squats, all that stuff, all because my roommate and I were smiling at each other in the hallway. So yeah, my roommate and I smirked at each other in the hallway, and in result, all 77 people in our squadron had to do push-ups because of it. So that's one of the stories where it was like, you weren't allowed to smile. So I smirked at my roommate, and literally my entire squadron of 77 people had to do push-ups because my roommate and I smirked at each other in the hallway. So that is a crazy story to me. That was a rough day. That was a rough day. We finished doing like our push-ups and all that stuff after they announced in front of the whole squadron that it's my roommate and I's fault that we're doing it. I walk back in my room, and I'm just standing there just like exhausted, just like reflecting and stuff. My roommate walks in behind me, just takes off his hat and just chucks it at the window because he was so ticked off about what just happened. So
I was just gonna say, you can, like, even throughout this whole like interview, you can just see like you're smiling, like having fun. So that had to be a little bit of a rude awakening, but obviously, like you mentioned, like it's just kind of part of the process, part of you getting ready to kind of be a preppy. But once you kind of obviously made it through basic training, which everyone kind of does, you start become in a preppy, which it still is a little bit physically, mentally demanding as well, but it had to be nice kind of transitioning a little bit into what life was like as a preppy. Like, what would your average kind of day be like?
yeah, that's a good question. So, after basic, we get through the crappiness of basic training, and then like a week later we start our academics and stuff like that. So an average day at the prep school, you typically get up at around 6 or 6:30, but that's on you. Like, so during basic training, they wake you up. Like, you fall asleep. Yeah, you go to bed at 9. Then basic training, they play a song with like a trumpet and stuff like that, and then they're banging on the door, screaming at you to get up. But in terms of a regular day, it's on you to get up at about 6:30. And then you have morning formation on the drill pad at 7 a.m., which is basically where everyone goes out. They're all lined up in formation, standing at attention, and it's basically like attendance. You know what I mean? Basically like roll call. Um, so that's it. That's at 7. That's at 7 a.m. in the morning. Um, Classes start at 7:30 a.m. And you typically have like 3 classes a day, and those
Okay.
start at 7:30. So it's kind of up to you to get breakfast like at like 6:30 or something like that before morning formation. That's kind of on you. So classes start at 7:30. They go till about, when did classes go till? There was like 4 periods a day for classes.
Okay.
So classes I think went till about 11:30. So from 7:30 to 11:30 you had classes slash academic time. After that you go to lunch, and then after lunch you go to military training, which was from like 1 to 2 o'clock.
Okay.
Um, and then after military training was typically either some kind of military briefing. Sometimes it was fun stuff like in a field,
Yeah.
like actual, in the field military type stuff. And then after military training, you have an hour of, man, what did we call it? It was basically an hour to like go get extra help. They called it like EI, extra instruction. So
Okay.
you have an hour to go get extra instruction from teachers to work on homework, stuff like that. And then after extra instruction ended at about like 3. So then after that, you head to athletics. So if you weren't a recruited athlete, it was your time to go work out. If you are a recruited athlete,
Yeah.
it's time to go to practice.
Yeah, that's when football practice would start for you.
Exactly. So that's when football practice would start. Football practice was typically about 2 to 2.5 hours, just depending on if we were lifting or not. After practice, on like if you're a football player, you finish practice, you shower quickly, and then you basically like you march to dinner, um, and you finish dinner, like you go eat dinner, you finish dinner, and then as soon as dinner ends, dang, I forget what they call it. Dang, I forget what they call it. But as soon as dinner ends, you go back to your dorms, and it's basically 2 hours of required like academic like work on homework time. And like there's really no, so like at the prep school your door is always open until it's time for bed. So it's like if you're in your room messing around, there's like there's going to be like a captain or something that walks by and is like, hey, let's go get to it. So you finish dinner, you go, and then you have your 2 hours of required like work on homework time. And then after those 2 hours are up, that ends at about 9 p.m. Yeah, that ends at about 9 p.m. So as soon as those 2 hours are up, then you have 30 minutes of what was called details. And that was basically cleaning your entire dorm building. So it was like 30 minutes of cleaning time. And then after you clean for 30 minutes, then it's time to, shut your door and go to bed and stuff like that. After basic, they didn't like make sure you went to bed, but it was
Yeah.
like, all right, like taps played. Taps plays at like 9:30, and it's like shut your door. If you need to work on homework, go ahead, or if you just want to chill, go ahead. But doors closed. It's like time to not be not be out in the halls now. So
Exactly.
yeah, so from 7 a.m. to 9:30, 10 o'clock, your entire day is structured and scheduled to what their plan for you is. So
I was just gonna say for those 2.5 hours for football, that was like quote unquote kind of your fun time for a little bit
yeah,
because you
yeah, that was
obviously getting
that
to
was
do what
kind of
you
your
love.
time to escape. That was definitely your time to go be with your teammates, be with your friends, um, and just kind of get out of the whole military thing for a couple hours. So
But I'm sure the practices still weren't easy. Like, what were those like? Were they really like that much different compared to like what you're used to? Obviously, I know we'll kind of get into a little bit about your shoulder injury here
hmm
shortly. I know that you went through like 5 practices, then end up getting injured. So you didn't have a ton of like practice time, but like what were
Yeah,
those practices like compared to maybe what you were doing prior? I know offensively, I'm sure you guys weren't going up against what Air Force runs in high school very much.
yeah,
So
absolutely. Um, yeah, so for me, I unfortunately didn't get the full experience of what practices were typically like. Like you said, I only had about 5 practices before they took me out because of my shoulder. But in those 5 practices I did have, again, this is like kind of an unfortunate thing. I didn't really get to experience what a regular practice was like because
okay,
that like week that I did practice, we had kind of just got out of basic, and it was like, hey, like we know you guys just got out of basic, and it may have been different at the actual. So like I was at the prep school. I believe the main academy, like when they get out of basic, it's like, hey, we're getting to it right away. Like, we got a game in a few weeks,
yeah,
like
like
pound
let's
time. You
get
know what I
going.
mean?
Yeah,
But at the prep school, we had like a couple weeks till our first prep school game, and we get out of basic, and practice was basically just like, hey, y'all got done with basic. We're kind of going to ease you into what our practices are like. So like those 5 practices that I had, they were like no contact practices. So I was,
okay,
I was hitting bags, I was hitting dummies, but I wasn't actually scrimmaging against actual people, which was unfortunate for me. Um, and at the time, since they were kind of, showing us what their practice was like, kind of getting us into that routine, the practices that I did were a little more slow moving because it was like, all right, hey, we're going to do this next. You know what I mean?
yeah, kind of like
So I
learning
didn't
what you're supposed to do.
exactly. So I unfortunately got like the more like, I don't want to say boring, but the more like easygoing first week of practice before I was informed that I should probably get shoulder surgery. That being said, after I did get taken out, I did still go to practice, and I got to watch what they were like. And it was a lot faster. It was a lot faster moving. You know what I mean? There was no really standing around trying to figure out what we're doing. It was like, all right, we're doing this, cool, and now we're going to this, now we're going to this,
Yeah,
and that
different
was
like stations, different things like first
exactly,
and
yeah. It
second
wasn't
game.
taking the time to explain what's going on. It was more like, all right, everyone knows what's going on now. You know what I mean? I guess though something I can say that was different in that was different that I did get to experience to its fullest extent. Even though I didn't get to experience practice to its fullest extent, I did get to experience the weight room and weightlifting to its fullest. So that was different than high school because where I was at in high school, we had our workout, and it was like, hey, like you have this much time to get your workout done. Make sure you get everything done as much as you can done, stuff like that.
Exactly.
Whereas when I was at Air Force, everything was in sync. So it's like, all right, hey, we're all doing this exercise at this time. As soon as we're done, the whistle blows. We're all sprinting together to the next exercises. Other guys are going to rotate in, do the one you were just doing. So like that was something. I know I kind of got like cut short on practices just because of my injury, but I did get to experience the weight room, and that was different. Just because it was so like there was no like in high school you could finish a workout and then you can like go talk to your friends for a few minutes and then go do your next set. At Air Force, it was like you're doing it, whistle's blowing, you're jogging to your next station. We're doing it, whistle's blowing, and you're going to keep rotating until we all start and finish the workout at the same time, you know?
Exactly. And I feel like that's kind of the approach for a lot of like D1 programs is
Mm-hmm.
everyone's kind of do it. So that's just kind of like the different approach, just the different kind of method that everyone wants to make sure that they're on time, that you only have a specific amount of time that you can truly spend on the field, spend in the weight room, and they obviously want to make sure you're getting bigger, faster, stronger, all of that as well. But you mentioned specifically about your shoulder injury and how you were required to get surgery.
Mm-hmm.
What was that like? Because I know one thing that is really important to you is your faith, and you've talked a little bit about your faith, how like it was a huge part of your like your recruiting process is a huge part of your life. Just talk about like how faith was instrumental in not only like the academy prep experience, but also when you figured out like, hey, like I'm going to need shoulder surgery. Like, I'm going to be done for the year.
Yeah.
Like, it had to be incredibly, like, challenging, like, frustrating as well, because you're still having to go through, like, the preppy experience, but you're also not getting to play football anymore.
Yeah, absolutely. And that was tough in terms of like, I went there to play football and then football was taken away like kind of right from the beginning, just because of my shoulder surgery. So I injured my shoulder my junior year of high school football. It was in the first game. And I went like to go like get past a blocker or something like that, and I ripped through, and then I heard like my shoulder pop. And it hurt for like a few minutes. It kind of went like dead for like a minute or two. But
Okay.
then I was good. And I actually played through my shoulder injury for like 2 seasons. Like so I played
Yeah.
through it for all of my junior year. I played through it for all of my senior year. And after my senior year ended, we were like, all right, let's go get MRIs on this. So I get an MRI on my shoulder, and I find out my labrum's torn. But I talked to the doctor, and the doctor was like, okay, this doesn't seem to be affecting your playing ability. You said it's not in constant pain. It only really hurts if there's like kind of a fluke play where it gets flung in the wrong direction too fast or something like that. So the doctor here where I live was like, yes, your shoulder is messed up. He's like, but I don't think that you need shoulder surgery. He's like, I don't think it's something that we need to like worry about right now. Um,
Exactly.
and I'm like, great, sweet.
Yeah,
Because
like
he
I
knew,
can continue to play.
yeah, exactly. Because he knew that I was heading into college football and stuff. He's like, yeah, with what you're heading into, he's like, I don't think it's essential to get this surgery right now. So I'm like, sweet, I that was like at the start of spring, so I do my track season, and then in the early summer, I obviously leave to go to Air Force. I go through basic training. And the athletic trainers at Air Force were like, hey, we're going to give you guys this paper. We just want you to write down on this paper any injuries or medical issues that you currently have, just so we know about them. You know what I mean? They're like, just write them down just so we know they're there. We know if we should, approach further or whatever. And, in my head, I'm like, cool. Like I'll write down my shoulder injury. I'm like, I was already told I don't need surgery. I'm like, they could check it out if they want. I was like, but I'll be good. So I write that down, and like it was either our first or second practice. The athletic trainers were like, hey, like, could we call over, these people? And they said my name, and they were like, hey, we just had some concerns with the injury that you wrote down. They're like, we're not, taking away your season or anything. They're like, we just want to look into it further. I'm like, cool. So the next day I go, and the doctor checks me out. And before my shoulder surgery, I was able to like pop this shoulder in and out of place.
Okay.
So yeah, and it didn't hurt, but I was able to do it,
Yeah.
So I showed the doctor, and he's like, yeah, that's not good. He's like, you're basically locating and dislocating your shoulder like on command. He's like, I'm gonna send you in to get another MRI. So I get an MRI. I get an MRI. It was actually on my birthday. I got an MRI.
Happy birthday to you.
Yeah, seriously. So I get an MRI on my birthday. It comes back, a couple days later or whatever. And I talked to the doctor, and he's like, yeah, the MRI is what we expected. He's like, your labrum's torn. And the doctor was like, the doctor like strongly recommended that I get surgery. And I talked to the doctor about it. I talked to the trainer about it, and they were like, look, they're like, you're an adult now. They're like, it's your decision. They're like, we can't force you to get surgery. They were like, but we would strongly recommend it. And the doctor at Air Force said that he thinks if I didn't get surgery playing like at the Division I level, that it was more likely to get, like, he said it was significantly more likely to get worse or
Yeah.
to like actually fully dislocate. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So after talking to the doctor and the trainer about it, talking to my parents about it a little bit, praying, I ultimately decided that like I was like, okay, you know what? Maybe I should get my shoulder surgery. I was like, the even though I played through it, I was like, it's still been there for a couple years. It's been a thing for a couple years. And I was like, I'm at the prep school. So if there is a year to get it, I was like, this would be the year because I'm not missing my main freshman year. I'm like, it's my prep year, you know?
Yeah, it's your
Um,
quote unquote redshirt year.
exactly. Yeah. So I decided to get the shoulder surgery. I got it a few weeks later. And it kind of like, I don't know, it was interesting because it stunk on the end that like I went to Air Force to play football. And then basically right from the get-go, I was no longer playing football. And then life at the academy itself was very difficult. Like it's challenging. Like ask anyone who goes there. I'm sure Jackson will tell you. I'm sure you could ask anyone who's there. Like life at the prep school, life at the academy, like it's difficult, it's challenging. And I was at a point where I was trying to figure out if the prep school was really what I wanted or not. Like I was at a point where I was trying to figure out like, okay, I'm obviously here. It's my prep year. I was like, I got the glitz and glamour of the official visit, X amount of time ago. I was like, but now that I'm actually here, is this really what I want? And I was trying to figure that out. And for me, like football was the I loved the people there, and I obviously love football. So football was one of the things that like was like I was looking forward to. You know what I mean? And then that got taken away from me, and then now I'm like, well, like we talked about earlier, football was kind of the break in the day from the military and stuff like that. And then I didn't get to play football. So then I was like really like kind of forced to hyper focus on all the other aspects, that I was
Like the
already questioning. Like, is
education,
this
stuff
really
like
what
that.
I want?
Yeah. Yeah,
So,
no, absolutely. And obviously, like when you're going to a school to do a specific thing that you want to go to that school and you don't get the opportunity to do that, or like it's
mhm.
at the very beginning, like that's like can truly change like someone's like, I don't want to say mindset, but like
But
someone's
perspective
like
for sure.
just perspective because like that's a big reason why you went there. That's probably not the only reason why you end up at Air Force, but like
Hmm.
that's a factor in that. And then obviously now having shoulder surgery, having to kind of recover from an injury, like that really kind of changes your approach to things. And obviously you end up making the decision to leave. And I know it wasn't just because of your injury. I know there's other kind of
Hmm.
factors into that as well. But once you made that decision, you entered the transfer portal. EMU ended up calling,
Yeah.
and they did show interest in you prior, but never sent the actual offer.
Hmm.
Talk about what it was like going through a second kind of quote unquote recruiting type like experience and how things up ended up at EMU when they didn't officially offer you in the first place.
Yeah, of course. So even though I was only at Air Force for like 4 months, those 4 months were very significant in my life, and then also going into my second recruiting process. So ultimately, I ultimately left Air Force because while it is an amazing place, outside of football, they didn't have what I was looking for in life. I personally, I'm not a big math and science guy. They are like the top ranked math and science STEM school in like the nation or something like that. So, I'm at Air Force, they like you don't really get to choose your classes at Air Force, at least not at the prep school. They like give you a set of classes you have to take, and 3/4 of them were math and science. And so already I'm like, I'm not interested in these subjects, and it's a rigorous version of these subjects. So that was challenging for sure. But then also Air Force didn't have the major that I wanted. It didn't have the minor that I wanted. It basically didn't have what I wanted to study. It had the opposite of what I wanted to study. So there was the academic side of things that, was for me like something that played a role in why I left Air Force. And then also everyone who graduates from the Air Force Academy, they're required 5 years of service as an officer in the Air Force. And while that's a cool thing, that's an incredible opportunity. That's some people's dream. I ultimately didn't want to be an officer. Like I wasn't looking to try and be an officer in the Air Force. I literally went to the Air Force Academy to play football. Um, So when I really just weighed it out, I was like, okay, this is a huge commitment. Obviously, like I just said, every day from start to finish is scheduled and structured. It's a top, like, rigorous academic school for math and science, which I am not a fan of, math and science. And then it's obviously a military school that's preparing people to be officers. So I had to make the decision, and I was like, okay, um, is this ultimately worth it? Even though outside of football, it's not what I want. And I prayed about it. I talked to my parents about it. And I was like, ultimately, this is too, like, this is too big of a commitment. This is too much to do for it to ultimately not be what I want in life, outside of football.
Okay.
Um, and even the athletic director at the prep school told me, he was like, look, football's a great reason to come here, but it's a terrible reason to stay. And I was like, if I stay, it'll be because of football, you know? Um, because, like, I would hate to look back in, like, say 15 years and be like, okay, cool, I have this good career as an officer in the Air Force, but what would have happened if I had pursued what I wanted to pursue instead, you know? So I ultimately ended up leaving Air Force because outside of football, they didn't have what I wanted in life. So then I enter the recruiting process again. And thankfully, since I was at the prep school, I technically wasn't a freshman in college. I was a preppy. I wasn't a freshman. I was at the prep school. Therefore, when I entered recruiting again, I didn't have to go through the transfer portal. I
Okay.
basically just had to announce that my recruiting was open again. And basically, high school recruiting rules applied to me because I was not a freshman. I was at the prep school. So the recruiting rules for me were the same as they were for high schoolers. I have all my eligibility left. None of my eligibility was lost. And that was like a really big blessing, because that made getting recruiting, a bit easier than it would have had I gone through the portal with no film. Um, so once I decided, like once I knew that I was leaving Air Force, I grabbed a paper and I basically made a chart of every Division 1 school that I had contact with. Whether that was I had a coach's phone number, whether that was their coach followed me on Twitter, whether it was their coach followed me on Instagram, and I
Yeah.
literally made a chart of every coach and every school that I had contact with. And I wrote up, like, a long, like, recruiting email slash text. And I basically spent, like, this whole night just, like, grinding, sending out text messages to every Division 1 coach I had contact with. And I think I sent like 23 text messages,
Okay.
that night. That doesn't mean
Yeah.
23 Division 1 schools wanted me. That's not what that means. It just
Yeah.
means I
No,
had
you just
some
wanted
way
to
of
reach out. Yeah.
communicating with with 23 coaches. So I sent out all the messages, and I get responses from a couple, and they're like, hey, like, we'll check you out or whatever. And I'm like, cool. So it's like my last week at Air Force, and I'm going through. I know I talked about in processing earlier. Now I personally am going through out processing. So I'm running around, like, all around campus, getting paperwork, getting signatures from people and stuff like that. And I'd sent out all these messages, and I didn't really, like, I got some people that responded. I got some people that said they would, look into me, or, like, maybe, talk to the coaches about it. But I didn't really get anyone that was definitively like, yes. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Um, so one of the messages that I did send out, was obviously to Eastern Michigan. It was to their defensive line coach at the time. Now he's the co-defensive coordinator. But Coach Teagarden, I sent him a message. Um, I had his phone number from the year prior, and
Okay.
he didn't respond. And so I was just like, all right, like, I guess they're not interested.
Yeah.
Um, because a few days had gone by, and been maybe like 4 or 5 days had gone by. So I'm just running around. I'm running around campus doing this out processing. And I remember I'm sitting in this room, basically waiting for someone to, like, give me a signature on a paper or something.
Okay.
And I'm just sitting in a room, and then all of a sudden I start getting a phone call, and I look at my phone, And I'm like, my gosh, it's Coach Teagarden from Eastern Michigan. And I'm like, sweet. So I step out of the room, I answer the phone, and he's like, hey, Owen, how's it going? I'm like, Coach Teagarden. I'm like, I'm so glad you called. He's like, yeah. He's like, I got your message. I'm sorry it took me so long to respond. He's like, I had to, talk to the coaches and stuff about it, and then also check with compliance, to make sure like we were good to like pursue the recruiting process. And he's like, well, look, Owen, he's like, we are really interested, man. He's like, I'm not kidding. He's like, I wouldn't call a recruit if I wasn't actually interested in recruiting him,
Yeah.
He's like, we're really interested. He's like, look, we want to get you here on a visit. And this was still in season at the time. He's like, so we're really interested. He's like, we've watched your film. I've talked to the coaches about you and stuff. And he's like, he goes, I'm sold on you. He's like, but he goes, we won't pull the trigger unless we get to like meet, like see you in person and get you on a visit. He's like, so we have a game day visit against Bowling Green coming up. He's like, will you be home by then? And I'm like, yes, I will. He's like, sweet. He's like, we're going to get you on this visit then. So I hang up and I'm just like, yes, I was so thankful. I was so thankful that he called. I was so excited. I go home from Air Force a couple days later, and then like a week or two later, my family and I drive down to Eastern Michigan, and go on the game day visit against Bowling Green. Because the coach, like Coach Teagarden said, he's like, he likes me, wants me, but like, we need to actually meet you. That way we, get a feel for you before we pull the trigger on anything. So I go to the game day visit. I get a tour of their facilities, and, they ended up beating Bowling Green. I got to talk to the coaches. I got to talk to one of their team captains, and it was a really cool game day visit. And after the game was over, Coach Teagarden comes up to me and he's like, hey, I'm really glad like we got to get you on the visit. He goes, we're going to talk about you as a staff this upcoming week. He's like, we're going to ask, obviously our team captain how he thought it went, what he thought of you, and then I'm going to talk to the coaching staff, see what they thought of you,
Okay.
and then we'll go from there. So I'm like, cool, sweet, So that was really cool. That was awesome to be recruited by them again. And at the time, I obviously still at this point didn't have the offer from Eastern, because their coaching staff was going to talk about me. While I'm waiting for Eastern Michigan to, talk to me or whatever, or to talk about me and like, decide if they want to offer me, I had also reached out to Western Michigan, and I was like, okay. I was like, they have their first Maction game coming up, and I'm sure you know what Maction is. It's like those midweek. Yeah, it's the midweek games.
Love Maction.
No, I love me some Maction. It's great.
Oh, absolutely.
So I saw on Twitter, because obviously Western had recruited me the year prior, and I reached out to their coaches and stuff, and I didn't really get a response. But I saw on Twitter they had posted like a QR code, and it was like, scan this QR code to sign up as a recruit to come to our next game, which was their first Maction game.
Yeah.
And I was like, you know what? I was like, I'm sure the coaches remember me from last year. I'm like, I'm gonna sign up. So I sign up to go to their game, their first Maction game against Ohio. And it's just funny. It was funny because last year, obviously, like, I was like kind of a priority for them. Like they were inviting me. Whereas this year, leaving Air Force, I was like, you know what? I'm gonna go to them now. You know what I mean?
Yeah, different experience. But
exactly. Yeah, a little bit different than the year prior. So I sign up, and I end up going to their first Tuesday night Maction game against Ohio, and so my mom and I went together. And we show up, like we park the car or whatever, and we get out of the car, and I'm like, I have no clue how this is about to go. I was like, either we are going to show up to this and they are going to like ignore me. You know what I mean? They're going to be like, cool. You're like, you had your chance last year. We're ignoring you. or I'm gonna show up and like they're gonna remember me, and then hopefully I'll get a chance to talk to their coach, and then hopefully they'll show some interest again and like kind of reevaluate me.
Exactly.
So I literally had no clue how it was gonna go. My mom and I walk into the lobby. There's of course other recruits there and stuff. We walk into the lobby. I sit down at a table. And then within 5 minutes of being there, their defensive line coach saw me and he points at me and he walks up to me and he's like, "You're Owen, right?" I'm like, "Yeah." So they have a new defensive line coach this year. It's not the same guy from last year.
Okay.
So I walk in there and their defensive line coach sees me and he's like, "You're Owen, right?" I'm like, "Yeah." He's like, "All right, man. Well, tell me about yourself. Like I want to get to know you." So like within the first 5 minutes, I'm like, oh, "Okay, sweet. This is going good."
Yeah.
So I'm talking to
good
the
start.
defensive line coach, and then one of the recruiting assistants kind of like interrupts our conversation and is like, "Hey, Coach Taylor would like to like speak to Owen in private, please." And I'm like, "Whoa, like." Dang. I'm like, okay, they do remember. So I go, my mom and I go and we talk to Coach Taylor, and he's such a nice guy. He said some awesome
Yeah,
things.
he's a great guy.
Oh yeah, you know Coach Taylor?
I've this, like, I don't know him like personally. I've like never talked to him, but I've
Yeah,
heard
but
great
you've
things about him.
absolutely.
I've seen his like conferences. I know he's a great coach. He's a great guy from everything I've
Absolutely,
heard.
absolutely. Nothing but positive things to say about Coach Taylor. So he brings my mom and I to a room, and he's like, "Owen," we saw you're back in the recruiting process. He's like, "We're really glad you showed up." Um, he's like, um, he was like, "We obviously recruited you last year and stuff like that." Um, and he was like, "We like you." He goes, "We're currently full on our defensive end spot." He's like, "We want to give you a preferred walk on." He's like, "I believe, I know the kind of player you are." He's like, "I believe you'll find a way to see the field. I believe you'll find a way to earn a scholarship." He's like, "But we really do like you, and we're glad you're in the recruiting process again. So we want to give you an opportunity." So that's like all within the first 15 minutes. Whereas 15 minutes ago, I had no clue what was going to happen. And I walk in there, and I guess, Western was still interested in me. So that was just such a big blessing. I'm like, this is amazing. Um, so, it was a good game day visit. A couple days go by, and Coach Teagarden from Eastern Michigan sends me a text, and he's like, "Hey, Owen." He's like, "This is Coach Creighton's number." Coach Creighton's the head coach at Eastern.
Yeah, also
And
a great guy.
oh, he is not just an amazing coach, he's an amazing human being. Coach Creighton is incredible. Um, so he's like, "Hey, I'm gonna send you Coach Creighton's number." He's like, "Can you call him tomorrow morning at like 10 a.m. or something like that?" And I'm like, "Yeah, absolutely." So the next day. I hop on a call with Coach Creighton, and I was expecting it to be like kind of this like 15-minute thing, like, "Hey, Owen, tell me a little bit about yourself. Like, we like you." And then if that 15-minute call went well, then like I was thinking he would offer. Um, it ended up being like a 45-minute call, and we like
Perfect.
it was, yeah, like it was amazing. Like, so I'm talking to Coach Creighton. He's getting to know about me. He was asking what's important with me. I told him like my three biggest things that I'm looking for in a place is, number one, my faith. Is it a place where I can grow in my faith and then also help others grow in their faith? And then two, team culture and leadership. Like, is it a place where it's not all about it's not all about I'm trying to get this much NIL money. I'm trying to, you know what I mean? I was like, obviously in college football nowadays, it's not uncommon to see people make their decisions based off NIL, to see people make their decisions based off how big of a school it is. I was like,
Exactly.
exactly. So I was like, I'm looking for a place, like, one, like I said, the faith, but then two, is it a good team culture and a good like team leadership and environment to be around? And then three, is it a place where I believe that I could help be developed very well to go to the NFL,
Exactly.
And
Which
Yeah,
Eastern Michigan has done that with defensive ends. Just think about Max
Max
Crosby,
Crosby.
all
Exactly.
those years ago. There's been multiple guys
Oh
at Eastern
yeah.
Michigan that has gone
No,
to the
absolutely.
NFL.
But obviously Max Crosby's the big household name that came from
Yeah, I was just
Eastern.
gonna say if you talk about probably the best defensive end or one of the best defensive ends in the NFL, I think you have to put up Max
Oh,
Crosby
Max
as up
Crosby's
there.
up there. And what's actually kind of cool, I guess just a little side note here. Um, I was so on my official visit to Eastern, I was actually told that all like the whole defensive line room, um, they get Max Crosby's phone number.
I love that.
Yeah, I know. So the whole defensive line room at Eastern gets Max Crosby's phone number. And then also like I believe he visits once or twice a year. So like the whole team gets to meet and talk to Max Crosby, which is
I
just
love that.
I know that's so cool. So that's a little side note that I'm excited about. Uh,
You're like sign me up right now.
yeah, exactly, exactly. So anyway, though, like I said, I'm on the phone with Coach Creighton for like 45 minutes. He's getting to know about me. I asked him about him, like I was getting to know about him and about the program. And Coach Creighton basically said the same thing as Coach Taylor, in terms of what the offer was. He was like, "Look, he's like, we are full. He's like, but we really we really do like you. He's like, you're a good football player. We believe in you. He's like, I can offer you a preferred walk on right now. And like he goes, I would. He goes, I give out like 5, 7 scholarships every year or something like that. He's like, I would expect you. He's like, I believe that you can be one of those people. You know what I mean? He's like, obviously you'll have to
Exactly.
earn it. He's like, but I believe that you can do that. You know. Um. So it was just an amazing call, and I hang up the phone, and obviously just now getting the same offer that I had from Western, and I'm just like, shoot, like I'm torn, you know.
Yeah.
So I knew what I wanted to do was to go on an official visit to both places, one to Eastern Michigan, one to Western Michigan, and then take a couple days and pray about my decision and go from there. Um, so that's what I did. I got scheduled for an official visit to Eastern Michigan, and then I got scheduled a week later for an official visit to Western Michigan. And I go on my official visit to Eastern Michigan the following weekend, and oh my gosh, it was like the best visit that I've ever been on. And it
I love that.
surprised me because like I'll be honest, in my head, like not taking official visits to any of the schools yet, and then looking like at like looking on TV and seeing how well Western was doing. Like in my head, I was like, I think Western might be the move, you know, but I didn't know for sure I wanted to take the visits. So I go to the official visit to Eastern. It was just remarkable. Like it was so incredible the way they embraced me. The environment, like have you ever stepped into an environment and like you can just like maybe you step into an environment, no one says anything, but you can just feel like this positive kind of like light uplifting thing about the environment.
Yeah.
I
Yeah, I get
totally
what you're
got that
saying.
from Eastern. And I'm there for a couple days on my visit. I'm getting to talk to players. I'm getting to talk to coaches, getting to really get a deep dive into what Eastern Michigan is all about. And it was remarkable. And
I
at
love
the
that.
end of my official visit at Eastern, I had an exit meeting with Coach Creighton. So I go into Coach Creighton's office, and I have like a nice like 20-minute conversation with him. And it wasn't business. Like I didn't go into his office for a business meeting, you know.
Yeah.
I went into his office literally just to talk about how the visit was, just kind of to talk and catch up, just as people. And Coach Creighton like shared his faith with me. He shared with me part of his testimony about how God spoke to him and about how he knew he was supposed to be at Eastern Michigan.
Okay.
And
That's awesome.
obviously, as a big man of faith, getting to share with another believer their personal testimony and getting to hear, what God is doing in that person's life, and getting to hear what he's feeling, what he feels God is also calling him to do in his life. Um,
Absolutely.
it was it was amazing. and I leave the official visit, and while the stadium's cool, the photo shoot's cool, getting to talk to the players is cool, but after I left that visit, I kept just thinking about that final conversation that Coach Creighton and I had, and I kept thinking about just what he said. I'll share a little something real quick. Hold on, let me grab my phone and share with you. I won't go like too deep into detail. But basically there's a Bible verse that Coach Creighton came across at a rough time, like in his coaching career. And he came across this verse, and he said he felt that God was speaking to him. And in the Bible verse, it's Habakkuk 1:5, and it says, "Look at the nations and see. Be amazed, for I am going to do something in your days that you would not believe, even if you were told." And Coach Creighton came across that verse, and I believe his second year of coaching, and their season wasn't going too good. And, I think he was at a point where he was kind of, this isn't my testimony to tell. I don't want to like botch his story, but like this, I believe he was at a point where he was kind of starting to like, maybe have a little bit of doubt and stuff like that. And he came across that verse. He came across that verse after he had lost a game one night, and he picked up his devotional, even though he didn't really want to. He did it anyway. He picked up his devotional and he came across that verse. And he said, like, in that moment, he said it had never been more clear that God was speaking to him. And then the next season, Eastern Michigan, I think, like, turned it around, and they had a winning record. They made it to like their first bowl game in a long time. And Coach Creighton was like, is this the amazing thing that God's going to do in my life? And he told me, he ultimately came to the answer that no, like, as amazing as turning it around the next season was, the amazing thing that God's going to do in Coach Creighton's life, is it's bigger than just football. Not that football, might not be a part of it, but it's bigger than just football. So having shared that story, that stuck with me so much. Moving forward in the recruiting process, I couldn't stop thinking about it. You know what I mean? And like,
Exactly.
there's more to the story. It's not my story to tell. It's Coach Creighton's story to tell. So I'm not going to go like share, Coach Creighton's testimony for him, but I'm sharing part of what he shared with me that really just stuck with me and like kind of convicted me as I had to go, choose and decide between Western and Eastern Michigan. So, the following week, I take my visit to Western, and, it was a good visit. In terms of football, Western had everything I was looking for. I mean, they got a good coach, they got a winning record. They obviously, at the time, they were headed to play the MAC championship. Obviously, now looking back on it, they won the MAC championship. And, they had a good defensive coordinator who had NFL experience and stuff like that. And, looking on it, I was like, Western has everything I'm looking for in terms of football. But so does Eastern, and
Exactly.
I told Eastern's coaches on my visit, and I told Western's coaches on my visit, what my plan was. And my plan was to take the official visit to both places and then take a day or two to just pray and think about it before ultimately making my decision. Because I didn't want to there's such thing as being high off a visit. Like, you go to a visit and it's like, wow, this is great, I'm coming. And I was like, I wanted to like take the time and reflect and pray about my decision. So after I take the visits, that's what I did. I took like a day and a half to just pray and think about it. And I feel like on paper, I'm looking at Western Michigan and I'm like, okay, like, they have what I want. They have good coaches. They've had NFL guys, and they're doing great this season.
Yeah. But
And
there's just something about Eastern Michigan, right?
yeah, there was like a pull in my spirit that kept leading me towards Eastern. And I realized at the end of that first day after the visit, I was like, I feel like I've spent this whole day trying to convince myself to go to Western Michigan, and that shouldn't be what I have to do, because in reality, I feel like my head was telling me go to Western, but my heart, my spirit, my gut was telling me to go to Eastern. You know, like my head's telling me Western, but my spirit is pulling me towards Eastern Michigan. And you know, I prayed about it. I talked to loved ones, and it was totally like I woke up the next day, and you know, I had prayed about it and stuff. Ultimately, I couldn't ignore that pull in my spirit. You know what I mean? I couldn't ignore that. Um,
Exactly.
and um, I'm talking to my now fiance at the time girlfriend, and I talked to
Congratulations.
her.
Didn't know that. So
Uh,
congratulations.
oh, thank you. That's thank you. Um, and I talked to her, and I kind of just talked out my thoughts to her, and I was like, yeah, I was like, it's Eastern's the move. I was like, Eastern is the move. And I go on the phone, and I call Coach Creighton from Eastern Michigan, and I basically told him, I was like, hey, I did what I said. You know, I took a day and a half, and I just kind of prayed and thought about it. And I was like, you know, obviously Western's doing really good this season, and they do have what I'm looking for in terms of football. I was like, but there's something in my spirit that's pulling me towards you guys. And I was like, you guys also have what I'm looking for in terms of football. And I was like, I'm gonna commit to Eastern Michigan. And I was like, I can't ignore that pull on my spirit. I was like, even if my head was telling me Western, my spirit's telling me Eastern. And I was like, and I
Oh yeah,
can't wait because I'm gonna commit to Eastern. And
I love that.
my gosh, Coach Creighton was psyched up. Like he was so excited, and just to hear how excited he was when I committed, that was so like reassuring. I was like, man, this is amazing. Like I'm going somewhere where I'm wanted, where I just feel that this amazing thing is going to be done. And Coach Creighton, he was excited. He, you know, he told me he was proud of me. He told me he can't wait. And then he brought me down to the defensive staff room and had me tell him, and they were all excited.
I
And
love that.
it was amazing. And what
Good.
I told Coach Creighton was, hey, honestly, I think one of the biggest things in my decision to come here was what he shared with me about how he thought God spoke to him. And I told Coach Creighton, I said, that amazing thing that God is going to do in your life, I said, even if I can be a small part of that, that's going to be such an honor and a blessing to me. And
I love that.
I can't wait. I can't wait. And that's how I ended up at Eastern. And
Hey, and
um,
now you'll be there in a little bit, like 11 days or something
11
like that.
days. Now I'll be there in 11 days for the start of something amazing, you know? Um,
Exactly.
and you know, looking back on it, like when I committed, I can say this, the difference of committing to Air Force for me personally, this is not for every person, but for me personally, the difference of committing to Air Force versus committing to Eastern Michigan, like there are no second thoughts at all. I have not since committing to Eastern. I have not looked back once and thought to myself like, you know, oh, maybe I should have done Western. Maybe I should have took more time to see other opportunities. No, not once. I
I love it.
cannot wait. Like even a few days after committing to Eastern Michigan, I sit down, I turn on the TV, and I watch Western Michigan win the MAC championship. And you know, I'm happy for them. I'm like, you know, good for them. You know, but watching Western Michigan win the MAC championship, still no thoughts. Like I watched Western win their big game, and I'm like, good for them. I made the right decision though. like
Yeah.
I like
Yeah. Now you're like, let's have that be us next
no,
year or the
exactly.
year
Literally,
after.
I've talked to the coaches. I've talked to some of the players, and I'm like, yeah, like you know, good for Western this year. That's going to be us next year. You know,
Absolutely.
and
100%.
no second thoughts looking back.
I love it.
I just cannot wait. I'm so excited. I for it being such a big decision in my life, like I can with so much confidence say that that is one of the biggest decisions in my life that I feel with full confidence was made and led by the Holy Spirit and not by just, you know, emotion and stuff like that, you know?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. And I can tell how excited you are that you're going to go to Eastern Michigan. You'll be practicing with them in the spring. You'll be playing with them in the fall. Hopefully, I'm running out on that field, making some impact plays next fall for a couple of years for Eastern Michigan. Hopefully, you're able to achieve the goals that you want to achieve, play in the NFL
Absolutely.
one day. But hopefully we can do this again, man. Hopefully we can talk a little. I know we talked a little bit about Eastern, but
Yeah,
maybe we'll have to have you back on in the fall or after the fall next year, after the first year at Eastern Michigan, talk a little bit about how that's went. But I really do appreciate you joining. I really do hope it was a lot of fun for you. I hope it was worth your
absolutely.
time to join. I'm super excited to see what you do at Eastern Michigan, and I hope you had fun. And one thing that I always say to anyone that ever joins is if you ever want to come back on, would love to have you back on. I think it'd be a really fun conversation to have again once you get to Eastern, start playing there, and start hopefully making some impact plays.
Absolutely, dude. Thank you so much. It's been so great. Obviously we've been texting for the past week, and you got me on, and I'm really glad I did it. I'm very appreciative of you and that you let me come on here and tell my story. Um,
Absolutely.
I'm not sure how much more time you have. I don't want to take too much time, but I genuinely do have a question for you.
Yeah, go ahead.
Obviously you started this podcast and stuff like that. And you're obviously, as of right now, I've seen you started out small and you're starting to like grow your platform. And I think that's so cool. Um,
Thank you.
what like,
I'm trying.
no, dude, and I could tell, like, that's great, dude. I could see you're putting in the work. Like, that's so amazing. And I love it when,
Thank you.
like, of course, man. Like, I love it when
I
people want to
appreciate it.
do something and then they go after it. Even if it means starting out small, I love seeing people want something and then go after it. So I guess my question for you, man, is like, what's your goal with all this? What's keeping you going, and what's your ultimate goal for the podcast? Because I think it's such a cool thing.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I just keep going because I love it. Like I love talking sports. Like I don't know if you look at the recording time, but it's been an hour and 44 minutes, which is by
Yeah,
far the longest I've ever had, which I've really enjoyed this conversation, to be completely honest with you. I just love talking sports. I love learning people's stories. I love giving people the opportunity to tell their stories, because obviously everyone has a different story, right?
of
And
course.
there's going to be some things that people can take away from any story. And I think just being able to connect with people like you, getting to be able to connect with great people that have great aspirations that they want to achieve. And I think just the whole idea of life is connecting with people and having
Absolutely.
people tell their stories. And I just love talking about sports. And I love going back and forth with people talking about sports team and kind of their passion, because I know you love football, and I'm
Yeah,
sure you probably know that I love football. So
of
I think
course.
I think that's just like the cool thing is this is just something I love to do, and I would love to eventually obviously make it a career. Now the chance that happens is like a moonshot, but hey, you know what? Why not take a chance, right? Like why not put in the
Absolutely.
effort? And if I end up making a career, if I end up making something out of it, great. If not, then hey, you know what? There's people like you, coaches, athletes that have had the opportunity to tell their story to hopefully eventually one day go back and listen on YouTube or Spotify or Apple Podcasts to hear their story a little bit, kind of do a little bit of reminisce. If it means I make it at the end of the day, like I would love it, but I think the most biggest part of this whole thing is I want to give people opportunities to share their stories.
Dude, that's amazing, man, and I really love hearing that. And I'll say one more thing. So like you're talking about, you love sports, you love talking to people about sports. Obviously, like I love football. I think football is an amazing thing,
Oh,
but
absolutely, 100%.
ultimately, like my goal, my purpose in life, it's way bigger than just football. Like I think having an impact on people, and then me as a man of faith, hopefully having a godly impact on people is
100%.
is 100% more important than winning a football game or making it Division 1 or playing at a certain level or all that. Like for me, dude, like I believe my purpose in life is one, um, to love and obey God as He loves me, but then to two, also love others as God loves me. And I think to
Absolutely.
make an impact on people is such a big thing. And dude, like when I look at you, when I see your podcast, it's like, dude, it's fun. Like we're talking about sports and stuff like that. But then like
Exactly.
what you just said, man, like hearing what you just said, dude, like I know there's something more to your podcast than, just talking about sports. And like, I personally believe, dude, that you can make a positive impact on so many people. Like, say your
Thank you.
podcast blows up and it goes big, and then like, all of a sudden all these people are listening to your podcast and you're impacting all these people, that's great. But then say you stay small for a while, and you steadily grow your platform, and it's like, dude, even if you just have a conversation with one person and you make a positive impact on that one person, no matter how big or
Absolutely.
small your platform is, dude, that's amazing. So I just want you to know, man, like, I'll be praying for you and you
Thank you.
personally,
I
and you and
appreciate it.
your platform. And I think just keep at it, please, dude, because like, I think I love that you're chasing something that you enjoy and you're chasing something you want. And I believe if you keep the faith and keep working hard at it, that you're going to impact a lot of people in many different ways. And I think that's an
Thank you.
amazing thing.
Thank you, and I'll be praying for you, obviously, for your career as well. I'll be always a big fan of yours. I'll always be cheering you on, and hopefully, one day, personally, I would love to see you represent the Honolulu Blue. I would love for you to represent the Detroit Lions one day. But hey, you know what?
Dude,
Any team, I'm good with if you
I'll
get to
tell you
represent.
this, I'm a big Bears fan, but
You're the
you know,
second Bears fan I've had in a row, so
that's awesome.
I
That's awesome.
understand.
I'll tell
I
you this,
understand
dude.
if you want to represent the Bears too. So.
Thank you, man. Thank you. I'll tell you this. Look, I'm a big Bears fan, but if the Detroit Lions drafted me, it would like flip in an instant. If 4 or 5 years from now the Detroit Lions call my name, boom, I'm a Detroit Lions fan just like that. So I'll be grateful for
Awesome.
whatever team gives me an opportunity. But for right
Awesome.
now, go Bears.
Understand that, but yeah, no, man, I'll be a big fan of yours. Would love to have you back on in the future. Really appreciate you
Absolutely.
taking your time to join. So it's been a ton of fun.
Absolutely. Dude, thank you so much. I hope you have an amazing rest of your day. And yeah, dude, God bless, man.
Thank you. Appreciate it. And that is a wrap to episode number 531. Thank you again to Owen for joining, and tune in to the next episode.